Hey everybody, Dave here from Dave Tries to Fix Stuff, the channel dedicated to the repair, restoration, and resurrection of broken stuff. And I thought I'd take this episode to try to run you through a few of the things that I do to try to troubleshoot problems that I find with amplifiers. I've got this Behringer bass amp here that turns on, but doesn't actually have any output to it. So I figured I could take you through, show you how I look for stuff, try to figure out what's wrong with it, and maybe get it fixed. So you want to see what I do? Stick around and I'll show you. Okay, so like I said, I've got a bass amp here that turns on and does not have any output. I've got the cable plugged in right here. If you look at this light that kind of shows input, when I touch the tip, you can kind of see that it's lighting up a little bit there. But you're not hearing anything through the speaker. So we know that it looks like there's a signal coming in at least into the first part of it, into the preamp. So what we need to do is see if the preamp is actually going to be exporting any signal beyond that point. So let me show you what I have going on in the back. Okay, so you can see right here that there is a control panel on the back of the bass amp here, and there is a preamp out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this this preamp out, and I'm going to plug a cable into it, and I'm going to plug the other end into this just a regular amplifier, just a regular little amp that's got the working speaker, all that good stuff. And I'm going to turn that on, and then I'm going to do that test. So the fact that I'm getting a signal coming through that is telling me that there is in fact a signal coming out of the preamp, and that can make its way, as long as it's making its way to a power amp, that part of it works. Okay, so the next thing I want to do with this is I actually want to try to test the speaker to see if the speaker is actually working. So what I have is, I took the speaker off of this thing. I just want to test it, for proof of concept, is to connect these wires up to a known working speaker here, which still work over here, but turn it on and see if it makes any sound. So, which I'm sure you can, I don't know if you can hear that, I'm sure you probably can, but. So we do actually have a working signal here. So now, let's take these same wires and try to hook them up to this, which we're not getting any signal. So it is quite possible that this speaker is not working, but I don't think that's the only problem either, and I'll get to the reasoning for that in a minute. So, but what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to test continuity across the speaker, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so again, we know that this speaker right here is a working speaker, and I've got the leads on this multimeter hooked up, and as you can see right here, it shows 5.2 ohms. For the resistance. That's not the impedance, because the impedance will be different on this thing once there's actually a charge applied to it, but it shows as 5.2. So what we want to do is we want to, again, I'm going to utilize these things because it makes it easier. Do that, hook this up to this guy, and then we can take this and see if we get anything reading across that, which we do not. So it would appear that the speaker in this thing is probably blown, or if it's not blown, it's possible that there is the overall connection inside from this plug is no longer connected to the speaker. So we'll have to look at that. In fact, I would bet that that's probably the more likely scenario, is that this thing is actually just disconnected inside and the speaker's not actually blown, because even with a blown speaker, there should still be some sort of connectivity, unless the coil is completely blown apart. So we will check on that in a minute. Now, the reason why I said I don't think that this thing is it's just the speaker that's not working, why this isn't getting output, there's a reason for that. And plug this thing back in, and actually I have it turned on, but if you look, there's a fan that's right there, and it's not turning on when I turn the power on. And the purpose of this fan, I know, is to cool the heat sinks that are there to cool down the transistors and the, you know, whatever's being utilized, the op amps. I don't have a schematic for this, so I don't know exactly what is being used for this, but there's some sort of power amp in here that needs to be hooked up to a heat sink, and then that's being blown on it to cool it off. And I'm thinking that because that's not working and there's also no output, there is a good chance that this thing might have a blown fuse. Because if it was the op amp that wasn't working in this, the power amp in this, if there was power getting to the board, I would think that this fan would still be running. And the fact that it's not makes me think that there might be a fuse that's out, or some sort of protector, some sort of breaker or something in here that might be out, that's causing the entire board to shut down. So I'll unplug it, and I'll actually start taking everything apart, the chassis, take that out, take the grill off the front so I can look at the speaker connections and all that, and we will look to see if we can find what the actual issue is. You know, I figured I would take a quick second to, you know, I said that it could be a blown speaker, but it's more than likely going to be a loose connection or something. If the speaker was blown, if I push on this thing, you should be able to hear some rubbing, but listen. This is really smooth, so I really think that, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I really hope that it's just a loose connection within here, so. Well, this thing is, in fact, still connected, so it is possible that there is a blown coil in here. It's very possible. I'll still try to get the, I'll test it on the connectors here too to see what that comes up with as far as an impedance on there. So okay, so it looks like that's good news, because putting it on here, it actually shows that I do have an impedance of 3.6. So what that's telling me is that if the impedance is good here, but I'm not getting the impedance at the other end of this cable, then that cable is most likely the culprit, and I will probably have to change that out, which is definitely feasible. Okay, so knowing that that cable is bad, and that theoretically could be a reason as to why this has no output. There's still a problem about this fan here, but before I get to start looking at that, I want to test, you know what, I'll test it on this guy. I will actually hook up, sorry I'm standing in the camera, away the camera, but I will take my alligator clips here, and I will hook them up to these, and then I will hook this up to the speaker output. I know this cable's good because I actually took it from my working test speaker upstairs, which this is not my test speaker. My test speaker has a different speaker in it. But I will plug this into here as such, plug this back in, turn it on, and then I'm going to so, we have, let's see what happens if I take that off. Because I've got a bad cable, this cable's messed up. As you can, hopefully you're getting an idea though of how I'm starting to narrow this all down. So I know from our testing that the speaker actually has continuity, but the overall, just the cable itself is not working. In fact, you know what? Let's do a little testing by hooking these up to this speaker and hooking it up just like we had it and see if we get noise out of this speaker. That way we can verify that, that all that is working. I'll hook this up to that, and I'll hook this up to that, and then I'll hook this up to that, and this should be hooked up to this, and then we should be able to turn this on and hopefully get sound out of this. Hopefully. Okay. Alrighty, so we have now proven that our speaker works. It just needs a new cable attached to it, which should be a fairly easy fix. And we are getting some output from the chassis. Okay, so I removed the speaker from the cabinet and I cut the end off of it because there's obviously something shorting inside of this. Got these things hooked up and now we've got proper impedance on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and just solder on a new plug at the end of this thing. I need to remember to feed it back through the hole that it goes through though, so that it doesn't, because I don't want to put the plug on the end of it and then not be able to get it through to be able to go out the top. Okay, I wanted to jump in here real quick and explain what happened here. I'm showing the footage of me taking apart or removing the power board here and taking the heat sink off of it and the fan and all that kind of stuff to try to find out why the fan wasn't working. But in the end, what you're going to find out here in just a minute is basically the lesson that you should take away from this is the most important thing that you can do with this stuff if you're not sure what it is, because I don't have a whole lot of experience when it comes to like cooling fans and heat sinks and stuff like that, is to do the research. Because I got this whole thing taken apart, got it broken down, looking for stuff that could be wrong with it, when in actuality, after doing a little bit of research and looking at what these fans are supposed to do, I found out that there actually was not a problem with the fan at all. So we're going to go back to the live stuff and I'll explain what I found. It is getting a little bit late and I'm going to be heading to bed here. And I wanted to kind of show a little bit of what I would consider a helpful hint on this thing, or on any project that you're working on. I actually put this thing back together because it has a lot of screws, bolts, stuff, you know, everything hold it together. And, you know, I'm not as young as I used to be. My memory's not as good as it used to be. And I didn't want to have it be a situation where I took all this stuff apart and then I forgot which screw went where and, you know, where everything was put together and this, that, and the other and da-da-da-da. So knowing that I was going to have to do more research on this, that I may actually end up getting a new power board on it and all that, I just decided to put this all back together until I'm able to kind of get back to working on it, to save myself the headache of trying to figure out how this stuff gets put together later. I mean, I still have a bunch of bolts and stuff over here, but this is all pretty easy. You know, I know these are all the speaker bolts right here. These are the screws that held in the front grille. These are the screws right here that hold in the chassis, and there's 2 of them that were missing when I got it, so I'm gonna have to, I think I have a couple upstairs that I can do. If not, I'm gonna have to source them, but these are all pretty easy because these things are all very specific in where they go. But the other ones over here that were holding this thing together, a lot of them are very similar, and I didn't want to get them lost. So that's a little trick that I use, is to put everything back together before you take a break from working on it, so you don't forget where everything goes.
One morning later.
Okay, so the cool news is that I went and did some research on this thing, and as it turns out, the fan that's in the back of this thing is actually hooked up to a switch, and there's no way you're going to be able to see from the camera. But the good news is, after getting this thing put back together, turning it on and leaving it on enough for long enough for the heat sink and all that to heat up, and for the chips to heat up, the fan actually engaged and is now spinning like it's supposed to. So as it turns out, the only problem with this thing was actually the cable going between the speaker jack and the speaker itself. So right now this thing appears to be working. Let's it does look a little noisier than I thought it would be. We've got you can hear this has got a pretty cool, like a doubling effect that actually drops the signal. It puts the signal through normal, but also layers it with a signal that's dropped an octave. So pushing that button takes it out. Then we got another channel here. Oh, I should probably go in and clean this pot too, though. Although now it's kind of. Yeah, I'll go back in and clean these pots in here as well, but yeah, the tone knob on this has a lot of dynamics in it as well. This is putting out some weird harmonics on this thing too. But obviously I'm not a bass player, and I don't have a bass guitar to really do any kind of real testing on this, but I got it fixed. So for the most part, I mean, I think this the purpose of this video has been achieved, which was to kind of show you how I narrow stuff down and troubleshoot to try to find out where the problem lies in any given issue. So hopefully you can take this information and, you know, use it to try and find problems in your own amps and all that. I'll probably throw up a few more videos in the coming months when I start to get stuff like this. It seems to be a somewhat easy fix, and how I can try to narrow down what the problems could be, and then that way we'll have a little series of stuff on troubleshooting and all that. So, but until then, I want to say thanks for watching. Make sure you click subscribe below, click the thumbs up. Any comments you have for me, leave me in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on Dave Tries to Fix Stuff. Thanks for watching.